Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Juggi Bhasin. To become a subscriber of the show, all you have to do is to press that red button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. We'd also really appreciate if you could like this video and share this video with your friends, with your colleagues. Okay, so let's come to this very, very interesting topic, which is like engaging everyone in the world right now. The whole world has, as it were, has become topsy-turvy ever since there is a new man in the White House in America. And whether we like it or not, America is still the sun around which everything revolves. It is still the predominant economy, the world power. And therefore, everything what happens in America affects the rest of the world also. But the question which I'm asking is, what is India's role in this new world order? Where does India stand in the list of nations vis-a-vis America? I'm going to talk about all that in this podcast, and therefore we are starting with this very obvious question: that has the world become mad ever since this new incumbent has come to the White House, or is there a method in the madness of the new person of the new president who has come to the White House, and he knows exactly what he is doing and where he is headed to, or where he is taking his country? I'm going to talk about all these issues in this podcast. But before I talk of the Indian position and the Indian role in this new wider array of nations, let's take a look at the American position, because if we understand the American position briefly, then we can understand the larger role of what India means in this new world order. The fact of the matter really is that the present American establishment is actually both philosophically, economically, politically, certainly, at odds with the left liberal regimes in Europe. I'm talking of the major economies of Europe, which is, of course, France and Britain. To that extent, Germany also, even though the conservatives have come to power in Germany, but still they're following quite a bit of the old path. It's at odds with these regimes. It is also at odds with the left liberal regime in Canada. And that is why we find that this daily battle, this oscillation is going on. There are these pronouncements made on both sides. We will impose tariffs. We are imposing counter tariffs, which is going on between Europe, the EU, and between Canada and America. It's like a ding-dong battle which goes on daily, but we will try and make sense of this mess. But in short, what I'm trying to say is that the new regime in America is completely at odds with these left liberal regimes. And don't forget that many of these left liberal regimes are actually campaigning against the new American president not such a short time back. And therefore, there is this element of, I won't use the word revenge because it's a very strong word, but there is certainly a element of getting back at them and teaching them a kind of a lesson. And therefore, this entire talk of tariffs being imposed. And so you can understand what's going on. The point which I'm making is that as these things escalate, are these only for television benefits? Are these only for show? Or these things will calm down? Maybe they will. But I get the very strong feeling that America is finally now cutting loose from this old legacy networks, from these old legacy relationships between Europe, between Canada, and it is looking more inwards at the same time, but it is also looking outwards in a certain sense towards newer countries and towards the Indo-Pacific, for instance, and certainly countries like India. And therefore, I would argue that the relevance of India will become more and more pronounced as the days go by. So that's the first part of it. Then the second part of it is the agenda. Let's try and understand the American agenda briefly, very quickly. The American agenda also is that they want to actually turn completely on its head the old policies of the Biden administration, because the old policies of, for want of a better word, profligacy or waste, or in terms of both the federal government, both in terms of outreach in the world, both in terms of spending, the support they used to give to the NGOs, to environmental causes, to even propping up regimes, or for that matter, dismantling regimes all over the world. That entire agenda is not of any interest to the new establishment in America, because this is perceived as waste, a complete waste of money by the new establishment in America. Therefore, they want to just finish off this entire thing, and this entire controversy, day after day controversy of Dodge and the cutting of federal funds and the slashing of the bureaucracy, is something which is really, it's an agenda of the new establishment. They will go for it. Whether Elon Musk does it or somebody else does it, that is irrelevant, actually, if you ask me. So the concern for the new establishment is really to cut the deficit, because America has piled on these trillions of dollars in debt, and therefore the establishment wants to cut this debt. It also wants it to make it a more robust economy, which means bringing back manufacturing, high-end manufacturing in America. And I'm certainly not, even though the president might keep saying that they will give tax concessions to all kinds of factories or industries which are set up in the US. But the fact of the matter is there are only certain kind of industries which can come. Just to give you an example, for instance, like the trade relationship between America and Canada was worth almost $600 billion. The entire relationship was worth that much. But to a very large extent, what a lot of people are arguing, especially from the establishment, is that this was a kind of a subsidized relationship. They were subsidizing the Canadian economy. The lumber, well, you get that same lumber in America also. They don't really need Canadian lumber. Cars, the American president wants the car factories to start again, to rejuvenate, or to begin from all over again in America. Why should they be subsidizing, cars from Canada? So the entire relationship, actually, of the biggest trading partner was actually on wobbly legs. And therefore, to that extent, this new establishment has started looking beyond these old traditional legacy relationships, looking beyond towards Indo-Pacific, towards countries like India, which I'm arguing, and my own feeling is that they will reach out more and more to India, to Vietnam, to all these other countries in the Indo-Pacific, because that is where the vibrancy is there, that is where the potential for economic growth is very much there. So that's the other factor we need to remember. And then the key, I think that pronouncement, there was an interview which was given by the US Commerce Secretary, I think it was yesterday, where he said that the aim of the present administration is to completely, for all people who are earning less than $150,000 in the US, that they would not have to pay any income tax. Now, if that comes into being, that's a huge thing. But it also means that how do you then fill up the coffers of the government? Then how do you get the money for the government? That means the tariff regimes, new trade relationships. That also means that green card scheme of America. And there will be takers for that. A lot of people are laughing at that scheme, but there will be, I promise you, there will be takers for that scheme, where you spend 5 million. I think that's the amount, and you become a green card holder. You become a citizen of America. So various innovative ideas to do away with old relationships, with legacy, and usher in new trade practices to make America, as it were, more solvent, more resilient, and cut down the debt, cut down the deficit. So that's the other thing. And then the present regime is also at odds with these left liberal regimes in terms of values, in terms of what I would call family values, in terms of belief in God. Uh, a lot of the present establishment in America argues that these were heathen regimes. They did not believe in God. They were ushering in new social practices like transgenderism, new genders, and all this talk. This was not, it was not sitting well with these people. These people want to go back to the old ways of believe in God, believe in family life, believe in family values. So that's the other thing. So in short, what I'm trying to say is, that the cleavage that is developing now between America and between old Europe or between old Canada is very, very real. It is not something transient which might just go away. The differences are very, very stark. They are very, very real. And they might just keep widening further and further. And therefore, this would be an America which would start looking different, which would behave different as we go on in the future. Now, that's the American overview. And therefore, for the new president, therefore, to make, which some people would say is this is complete madness what he is doing. But there is, as I'm arguing here, that there could be a method in the madness. Whether he succeeds or not is a totally different thing. But where does then India come into it? Because let's also now consider it from our point of view. What would be the Indian role in this entire thing? And can India benefit from this change in the world order? Or would India be worse off? Let's try and understand that because that is of relevance to us. I'm arguing here that India is going to play a very, very important and a very, very critical role in this new world order, which is being ushered in by the new incumbent in the White House. And why is that? The I'll start with something very, very basic, which I don't understand why people are not focusing on that. But our compatibility with the new American regime is already up 50, more than 50%, I say, on something very, very simple, because both sides believe in tradition. Both sides believe in cultural values. They believe in family life. They believe in family values. And if you notice very, very carefully, in both the meetings when our prime minister went to Washington and Elon Musk turned up, he turned up with his kids. Okay. When J.D. Vance, the vice president, turned up, he turned up with his wife, Usha. Um the emphasis on family values, the emphasis that there is a commonality in terms of society, in terms of the way forward, in terms of culturalism, that by itself is almost 50% of the battle won. So that's really, in a way, it's a good start which both the countries have made. Now, let's talk a little bit about the vexed issue of tariffs and of sorry, of trade policies, which is has been, center stage, which has been occupying minds both in India and in America. A lot of people feel, starting from the simple fact that when the prime minister went to Washington and President Trump did not even turn up at the patio to receive the prime minister, even though meeting inside might have gone very well. But a lot of people, a lot of podcasters have been arguing that it only goes to show that India does not get that kind of respect in the world. I completely differ with that prognosis. I differ with that particular assessment. Um, the president of the United States turned up to meet Zelensky, met him very warmly at the patio, and then they went inside. And we all know what happened after that. These gestures, these things are not so important any longer. What is really important are the substantial takeaways from what the men, the top people are discussing, the establishments of both countries are discussing. And I think this is my theory, which I'm putting forward here, that what really could be going on is as follows. As I said, good positive start because of the culturalism factor. Both countries agree on that. Now, as far as the tariffs and all these are concerned, the fact of the matter is that yes, there is a lopsided tariff structure, especially from our end also, which we have to, at some point or the other, we have to rectify because we have a legacy issue in terms of protecting our own industries, to that extent, protecting agriculture also, some would argue rightly also. But those have to be, again, they have to be reworked, they have to be rectified. But the more important issue, I think the real critical issue is that what is America looking for in India and what is India looking from America? Let's take our position first. What are we looking from America? We certainly want to be on the right side, and I don't mean in terms of right wing or anything, but certainly on the right side of America because A, America is the predominant power in the world, no question about it. But also the fact is that today, when you move forward in the world, especially if you move from a developing economy to a more advanced economy, you will do it with the support of technology. There's no question about it. And yes, the best technology whether it is in civilian technology, whether it is military technology, whether it is artificial intelligence, it still resides in the United States. And therefore, we have to collaborate with the US, no question about it. And that is why we need America. Yes, we have our own indigenous efforts in the process, but we still need to tie up with America in so many critical sectors. That's the first part. Why would America need India? The America would need India for very two obvious reasons. It's because of our population dividend. We are perhaps the biggest market after China, obviously, in the world, and it would be insanity on the part of any other country to ignore India. No country actually can ignore India. That's the first part of it. Number two is the other thing which we keep forgetting is this talent pool which we have. The talent pool, so many of our people, youngsters, talented people, professionals, doctors, engineers, IT specialists, um, nurses, so many other skilled workers, they are constantly moving abroad, seeking jobs abroad. And it might actually be a very good thing for us. A lot of people say, oh, it's brain drain. But I would argue that a lot of these people keep their connectivity because of culturalism back with India. Remittances are sent back to India, which is great for India. So it's a great symbiotic relationship. And therefore, from those two factors, population dividend, the great market, and because we have a talent pool, America can never ignore India. And let's not forget the third important factor. The third important factor being that the Indo Pacific now is the most important region in the world, no question about it. This is the place where the future is. Whether we like it or not, countries, legacy countries, European nations, Britain, UK, Britain, France, Germany, other countries, Canada, all these countries are the growth has as it has ossified literally means that it isn't growing anything. In fact, they are in a kind of a regression, if nothing else. They are torn by war, by their own ambitions of top leaders. The war is going on. Nobody wants to put an end to it. Everyone wants to use the war to perpetuate their own regimes, as we all know what's going on in Europe. Europe is in therefore in what is I would call a mind deadlock. It can't come. Sorry, it can't come out of it. And the place for resilient growth, the place for innovation, the place for new ideas, the place for fast economic growth is in the Indo-Pacific region, countries like India. No question about that. And therefore, what would how we benefit from this relationship with America would be as follows. America, to that extent, has probably, and this is again my theory, it has decided that it has the European Association, the Canadian Association has outlived its usefulness. It wants to turn away from that because all it is doing, it thinks, is that it is sinking money in a bottomless hole. It is just going on putting money there, whether it is in NATO or in defense or whether in subsidized trade agreements, both sides. America is not really benefiting from it. That's the thinking. And therefore, they need new vibrancy, they need relationship, which means where do they turn to? They can only turn to the two major biggest economies are, of course, China, India, and Japan. Japan, they already have a robust relationship. Now, China is the country which I don't think the US is ever going to trust because they know that China is catching up on them. And therefore, this rivalry, this fierce competition is always going to be there. And therefore, India is the country because India is not in is in a race with America. India wants a symbiotic relationship with America, and America knows that. And therefore, if we can for a moment ignore the white noise. You know, when you listen to CNN and you listen to all these channels and you listen to the American spokesperson, I think her name is Leavitt. And every day she comes up with, oh, but, India is not allowing a bourbon whiskey and so many tariffs India has imposed as if bourbon whiskey is consumed in India. Nobody consumes bourbon whiskey in India. We all consume scotch. Uh, Ignore that white noise. Those are those little bit of pinpricks because we have a mature regime here which doesn't even bother to talk about all these things because deeper and more important relationships are being forged. If we ignore that white noise, then there's so much of compatibility between the two countries. Because what the American establishment would be keen upon would be that eventually the supply chains start shifting from China to India. That's my own theory. And even though the new president keeps talking of the fact that, oh, we have to manufacture everything in America, but the fact is they also know they want manufacturing of, they especially want to bring back some of their legacy industries, like cars, for instance, like they want to, of course, revitalize the oil industry, manufacturing and high engineering, other things. But if you ask me that if they want to set up textiles or that they want to set up t-shirts and all that, that's not going to happen. Those things will always be in different countries. So the importance of India would be as a supply chain route, a major supply chain country which supplants what they are going to eventually divest away from China. That would be the Indian role. And that is why India becomes more and more important in this new world order for the American ambition. And that is why, if you look at it very closely, there are two important visits which are slated to take place, and so quickly after the new regime has come over in America. Tulsi Gabbard, uh, head of the national intelligence, she's coming over to India, and then JD Vance and his wife Usha, they're coming over to India. And I think the entire gamut of things, including intelligence sharing and the intelligence sharing and what's happening in this part of the world, maybe even the Russia war, the Ukraine war, all these things are going to be discussed. And my own sense is that with JD Vance, probably the broader contours of the trade policy of this trade agreement between India and America, that could also be discussed. So in this new world order, India, I think, will occupy a very, very important position. There's no question about it. India is not going to be ignored. And if we can forget for a moment and forget people who keep saying, oh, but today the spokesperson, they criticize, the new president criticized India on tariffs and he was giving these examples, ignore that. Ignore the white noise. See for the deeper relationships, how they develop. That is going to be the future between India and America. These are all the positive things. But at the same time, it's important to understand that there could be one factor which could actually upset the entire apple cart, because India and America have been known in the past that something suddenly comes out of nowhere and upsets the entire relationship. And what could that be? Um, that can, of course, be the relationship with Russia. Uh, I think at a news conclave in Delhi with the Commerce Secretary, the US Commerce Secretary was saying that we want India to stop buying weapons from Russia, and it wants to focus and get all its weapon supply from America, which is what they really would want. Why wouldn't they want that? Because India is today, in today's day and age, after Ukraine, it's the single largest importer of weapons in the world. And therefore, why wouldn't America want that? But the fact of the matter is, I don't think so. We will ever let go of a relationship with Russia also, because at the end of the day, even though it becomes trite, it becomes a cliche that Russia is an old and trusted friend. But the fact of the matter is, the Indians are known to play a quiet but a very subtle diplomacy. They will balance both sides. They will balance the relationship with Russia. They will balance the relationship with America. I don't think so that we'll ever get go of Russia. And therefore, whether it is oil, whether it is weapons, or whether it is a combination of both things, something or the other, our relationship with Russia will be kept alive by the Indian government. And but the problem there which can occur is, the problem is this Ukraine war. Because now let's face it, there are vested interests, especially in Europe, in Canada, and other places, which want the war to continue. And I personally have a bad feeling about this entire thing. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think so. These ceasefires and these peace talks might work out that well. This war might actually reach to a conclusion. It will go ahead for a conclusion because, in a very logical sense, if you think about it, If Russia is winning the war, if it has, as latest reports are coming in, that it has taken control once again of its region, that is Kursk, and in the next 28 to 24 to 48 hours, they will have taken complete control. Then there are no aces up the sleeve of Ukraine. They have nothing much to barter with. What can they negotiate? And just by one country saying that you come to the negotiating table, the fact is the winner takes all, the winner dictates the term. And if they are winning, then why would they withdraw? Uh, that is the factor. And therefore, this war could actually be heading towards a conclusion, but it could drag on for some time. But America might just ask India to take sides. America might just say that we will not allow the supply or the transport of oil in the tankers between Russia and so that between Russia and India. So that could be a challenge. How we play with dexterity, with subtlety, let's wait and see. But the fact of the matter is that in this new world order, America is very keen that we develop this relationship, the supply chain route with India, which comes through the Middle East, which comes through countries like Saudi Arabia, through Israel, and then eventually the United States come into the loop, bypassing many other countries which are of not so much of interest and relevance to America. So the Indian position is very, very important. But as I said, there could be a lot of factors which could upset this thinking. There could be a spanner in the works. There are certainly forces out there which don't want this relationship to succeed. No question about it. Both within the country, in our country, also within America, but certainly outside America, which don't want this relationship between America and India to succeed. But as of now, as I said, this entire policy where I personally feel that America is ready to give this role to India that you become a supply chain partner. And those industries, and we can develop this. And this talk of 500 billion, this trade relationship is actually not talk. This could actually become a reality between India and America. Uh, India could actually become the biggest trading partner of America. Who knows? I mean, that's a possibility in the next few years. All that is a possibility, unless, of course, a spanner is thrown in the works. But these are very, very interesting times. These are times we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very cautious. But the Indian diplomacy, the Indian outreach, the Indian political and diplomatic outreach is always very quiet, behind the scenes, subtle, well thought of, well considered. And that should be the way if you stay the course. There's no reason why this relationship with India and America will not work out for the benefit of both countries. And so, on this note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. You liked the show. Once again, I'm saying subscribe to the show. Click on that red button on your screen. You become a subscriber for free. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers till next time.